Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back again, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. I appreciate your tuning in, and I wanted to talk about something today. I wanted to talk about planning your vacation. And I wanted to talk about vacations because it's the middle of winter now, and I'll bet you didn't see that coming out of me, but one of the things that a lot of people do and look forward to, myself included, especially in wintertime, is where are we going to get away from here? And away from this. So sometimes it's not until the middle of summer when the kids are out of school. Sometimes we can get out of here in the middle of winter if you're retired, especially. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about things I run into from time to time in my practice regarding vacations, planning vacations, and especially even getting into timeshares. Because I run into clients who have timeshares, and oddly enough, some people that have timeshares use them every year, and some people with timeshares never use them now and can't get rid of them and want to get rid of them, and they're a nuisance. So I thought I'd talk to you today a little bit about the financial planning aspects of planning a vacation. Let's start with those timeshares. If you're on vacation and you find somewhere that you like and you're down there and you're invited to attend one of the meetings for timeshares and get a free hotel stay or 2 nights somewhere, or whatever they'll use to attract you to the meeting, these timeshares are attractive and people buy the timeshares. But I want to go through some of this vacation planning with you. So we start with regular vacation planning and we end with timeshare planning. So regular vacation planning, I'll share this with you. When we look at vacations, everything with a budget that we have in our lives is with a budget, whether we write it down or not. We're living on a budget. So most people don't like budgets, don't like to make budgets, don't like to write things down, don't like to plan, don't like to limit ourselves. I understand, I get that. But we do anyway, because at the end of the month, if we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money. So we did live on a budget, whether we liked it or not. What I want you to consider doing is on the vacation side, I want you to think a little bit about one of the strategies I taught a couple years ago on the show, which is really balance of life. Some financial planners, some financial analysts actually continue to pound into people, you'll never have enough money to retire, you won't have enough money to retire, all your money has to go to savings for the future. And I'm here to say that's just not a good balance of life attitude. So what I want everyone to do is think about life with your finances based on, what if I knew I wasn't going to be here next year? What would I do differently this year if I knew I wasn't going to make it and was going to die next year? What would I do differently? What would I make sure to do? And then what I want you to do is, and you can write those down, by the way. And then what I want, because everybody seems to have major regrets, either died too soon or lived too long. If I only would have known this, I would have done these things differently. Or when people get to retirement, if I'd only known this, I would have done this differently. Maybe I would have spent more money, or maybe I would have spent less money, or maybe I would have saved more money. Who knows? But everybody has some regrets. So I want to put you there now a little bit and think, number one, what if I was only going to be here for a year and knew that? Somebody told you had a critical illness, that terminal illness, that you only had a year to live. What would you make sure to do between now and then? And then I want you to think, someone told you you were one of the ones that were living to age 97. If you knew you were going to live to age 97, at 97, what would your regrets be? Well, if I knew I would have lived to 97, I would have done this differently, or I would have done that differently. So I want you to think that way, because that gets into some balance of life decisions regarding financial planning. So the way I see it, I don't want to guess wrong, and I don't want you to guess wrong. So I want balance. I want to live for some now and live and save for some later, so that I'm half right and half wrong all the time, instead of trying to guess which one's right and choose the right choice, so to speak, on how to live life and then be wrong, because then I'm 100% right or 100% wrong, and that's gambling. So I like balance. So I'm here to talk about vacations, imploring some people who don't save any money. This is going to be an easy conversation because you're going to like what I have to say. And others are who like to save a lot of money. I'm going to say you need to go on vacations. You need to spend some time with your family. You need to not let these times go by without enjoying them, because you can't get them back again. And we can't relive things or get vacations. People are getting older, our kids and our grandkids. So back to these vacations. That to me is a balance of life decision. It helps refresh us, but how do we pay for these without wrecking our budgets and without wrecking the rest of our financial plans and retirement plans? So we take a little bit of time and we evaluate what you earn in a year. We evaluate where you'd want to go on vacation, how much you can afford, whether to stay at home, which is very enjoyable, by the way, go somewhere, go to the beach, go somewhere, go with the family, go just by yourselves, and how much will that cost? So you want to think about this, because all-inclusive vacations down in the Bahamas or Puerto Rico or somewhere like that are maybe $2,500, maybe $4,000 for 1 week. So you sit and you say, did we just blow all our money? Should we not have done that? So you don't want to get overboard to your own budget, but you do want to plan. So some people get into these timeshare issues, and there's nothing at all wrong with those. When I say these timeshares, I don't mean that in any derogatory way at all. But timeshares are basically you taking and choosing 1 week at one location being your week, and you pay maybe $10,000 or $15,000 or $12,000 in return for being able to stay at whatever resort that week. And then the fees might be $800 or $1,000 a year after that's paid off, or even right when you begin payment. If you don't pay for it up front and you take it over installments, you still owe these maintenance fees, these annual maintenance fees for these associations. So then let's say you do make that choice, and you do know where you want to go every year, and you factor in mathematically, to your own opinion, okay, $10,000 or $12,000 is $300 a month, let's say, whatever factors they apply for the payment plan, and $800 or $1,000 a year, which is another $80 or $100 a month, let's say, until you get the upfront paid off. And then you only, they'll say, and it's true, pretty much, owe $800 or $1,000 a year for this week's vacation, and they'll add up for you how much less expensive that is than had you gone on that same week's vacation at that same resort on your own, with having to go out at restaurants where you can cook in the timeshares and escalating costs of vacation over the next 30 years versus this being fairly fixed. It is fairly fixed, but it's not in stone carved out that they can't raise the amounts, because they can, due to increased property taxes or due to increased maintenance costs. They're allowed to change that. So here's what we run into. The initial decision, should you buy a timeshare or not? It's somewhat of a personal decision, but it's somewhat of a financial decision. And to me, it's both. So you look at this and you say, you're up front financing future vacations. Do you want to do that? So that's number one. And you need to think real hard on that because that's an expensive investment. If I asked you to put $10,000 or $12,000 into an investment right now that you didn't have, and I said, oh, we can finance it for you for 3 or 4 years, and then it'll be $800 thereafter, you know, you have to think about whether you'd say, we can't afford that. You're not getting a vacation out of that deal where you are out of the other, but you'd say, we can't afford that. And on the vacation side, you'd say, well, yeah, but we're spending some money on vacations anyway. And when we look at how much we're spending, maybe it's $1,500 every year, and now it'll only be $800. And I'll say, yes, but now you're trapped to that one location, and you have to pay $10,000 or $12,000 in a, you know, to create that perceived $800 a year now savings or $700 a year savings. So I just want you to be careful on the upfront and prepare in advance. Here's what I want you to do. Prepare in advance before going on vacation. What are we going to do if we're hit with a timeshare person? What you don't want to do is go with the flow, get on vacation, you're on the beach, someone comes up to you on the beach, hey, would you like these tickets to a show, or would you like these if you'll only spend 4 hours with us, there's no obligation, etc. So you're caught with the wave, going with the flow into the room, you go to the meeting, you don't know what to do, it's impromptu, you don't have experience with timeshares. You say, hey, that doesn't sound so bad, and you sign up. That's what I don't want. I don't mind if you research this in advance, know where you want to go, and say, before we go down this year, should we buy a place? We like it down there. Should we consider buying a condominium? Should we consider owning a house? Should we consider buying a timeshare? That's the time I want you to start thinking about, okay, we now know we want to go somewhere probably every year. Should we buy somewhere, finance it? Should we rent it out? Should we buy a timeshare? That's what I want to help you with here. If you get to that point, I want you to think in advance so that if you're hit with someone with timeshare down there, you've already thought in advance. Now, if you haven't done that and you're hit with timeshare down there, you haven't done that planning, here's what I'm going to tell you. Go ahead and go to the meeting. Go ahead and go on the tour. Do not sign anything because it's a buy now or won't be here tomorrow plan. Do not sign. So if you do that as your research, if you have the strength to do that, come back home not having signed something. Next year when you go back down, they'll still be there. Other areas and locations will also still be there. You could buy these later. You could buy these after you come home. So do not get caught up in that. Consider that your research. Then go home for a month or two. Now after the luster of the vacation wears off, and you're back to trying to pay your bills again, having a hard time paying your bills 2 and 3 months after vacation, and say, hey, would we still think we should have bought that timeshare? If your answer is yes, buy it. You can call them and buy it and make arrangements to buy it. You don't have to be sitting in that room. So you can still do it. So you can walk away and still be able to get it. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Do all the research, get the numbers, and leave. You're not losing anything to leave. It's still there. They have a lot of them to sell. So then you get back home and you think about it for a couple months. Now, let's say you buy one. Here's the other side of this coin. I have a lot of clients who own timeshares over the years that keep asking me the same thing. I can't get rid of my timeshare. How do I get rid of my timeshare? They ask me that all the time. I've had that for 20 plus years. And the first thought of everybody is, oh, I want a timeshare. And then the second is, I can rent almost the same. I don't have to buy a timeshare to be able to get down there. So I want you to think hard about this because these people that bought timeshares cannot get rid of them. And you say, well, so what? They'll just Give it up. You can't. You can't just give the timeshare back to the company, or, because remember, they're still being hit with the $800 and the $1,000 fee and maybe no longer going on vacations. The kids are grown up. They don't use them anymore. A spouse died. They don't use them anymore. And now nobody wants them. Even family members. Oh, I'll just give it to the family members. That'll be fine. Ask your family members now. If you owe $1,000 every year to be able to take over this timeshare and go down there, would you go down every year, first off, to that place? Because now you have to. It's an obligation now instead of more of a joy. And second, or not for everybody, but for a lot of people, would you go down there, and do you want to be burdened with that you have to pay this $800 or $1,000 every year to keep it active, keep it valid? Marriott Rewards, RCI, these are some of the big companies. They normally won't take them back. So you can't just say, here's a timeshare, I don't want it back anymore, I don't want to pay these fees. They'll still hold you responsible for those and put liens on, and they'll put it against your credit. It's serious business. So you get to a point where you're 65 or 70, where in retirement, you're not using that location anymore. And you can't get rid of them, and you're still paying these fees every year, and it's quite a burden. So the other side of this story, and I'm very serious about this because I run into this all the time, people asking me, what do I do with my timeshare? They have everything else figured out, but what do I do with my timeshare? So some of the companies do now have started offering programs where they can either list your unit for sale or sometimes even buy them back from you. Or you could sometimes rent your unit, either through the association or on your own. So you have to see, if you have a timeshare, are they not allowed to be rented? Some might say, well, you're not allowed to rent this. Others might not say that, and you are allowed to rent it individually. Putting an ad in Craigslist or the local paper, or talking to other unit owners in the same week you're in down there, and saying, hey, do you have anybody else in your family that might want to buy us out, and they come down with you while you're there? Now be careful, because a lot of family might say, no, we don't want any of our other family members down here. That's what we're trying to get away from. But hey, you never know, it might work. So you don't want to be trapped in these timeshares that you then can't get out of. And when I say these companies, some of them, not all of them, might have a program to help you manage those timeshares, either rent them for you or sell them for you or buy them back. We're talking probably only 20% of the value, 10% of the value. We're talking you might only get $1,000 or $2,000 for these $10,000 and $12,000 timeshares that you paid for. Now, here's the thing I don't get. How can everybody be having such a hard time getting anybody to even take over their timeshares for free? Nobody wants them. You can list them in Craigslist. You'll see them in Craigslist. They're available for $1 and nobody still wants them. They don't want to take on these fees. And yet, they're still holding the meetings down there, the sales meetings at the resorts, selling them for $10,000 and $12,000. How can that be that people will pay $10,000 and $12,000 down at the resort and won't pay $500 or $2,000 to you up here if you list it? I don't know if it's because they don't trust the shares are valid or the weeks are valid. I don't know. A lot of them are. Maybe some of them aren't. I don't know. Talk to an attorney. But it boggles my mind that people can't get rid of these timeshares and they're still selling them at the resorts for full value, $10,000 and $12,000 or more. And then you look at prime weeks and off-prime weeks, and you can trade them for other locations. So you're not really always trapped to that location, as I say. But that's subject to availability. So back to these selling or giving away these shares. You go to the resorts, you ask them, and I do want you to ask them if you're stuck with a timeshare problem, what are my options? Marriott Rewards, RCI, you pick up the phone and you say, if I no longer want these. That's another question I want you to ask if you're thinking about buying them. But do not ask the people that are selling them. Come back home 2 months later, call the company where you were intending on and maybe still intending on buying, and ask them, as if you already hold shares. If I or somebody I know holds shares and no longer wants them, what are our options with you? Will you agree to take them back? Will you agree to sell them? Here's how it works with some of them. They'll agree to list them for you to sell them. Let's say somebody says that. Now that means you're still paying the annual maintenance cost, but they'll say, we don't want you to use your week. Because for sale, we want whoever buys it to be able to use that week in that current year, because right after they buy, they want to use it, is what we're usually told. So now you're paying that fee and holding that week open until at least real close to the end of the term or something. And it's a difficult situation, because if it doesn't sell, you paid a week, and then sometimes you can put that week in reserve so it's not totally lost, and other times you can't. So you have to look into all these things before you make any investment. Doesn't that sound like that makes sense? It does make sense. So look into all these things. How do you get into something? How would we get out of it when we're done with it before you ever invest or get into anything? That is the way we do with our investments, with our stocks and bonds. When I'm done, how do I get out? What's it cost me to get in? What's it cost me to get out? How long am I stuck in it? These are all the same decisions, but it applies to timeshares, and people don't apply the same principles to making those decisions. So I thought I'd talk about it on the show, that people are having a big problem getting out of these timeshares. And I wanted to share with people, it's not a real gift if you will those to somebody you love, when it comes with a burden of them having to continue to pay those annual maintenance fees. So think twice on that, folks. You also have a probate issue. I won't get into that today too much, but you have a probate where if you have that timeshare, you really have some property interests. And if it's in Florida or Arizona or whatever, that's probated in Florida or Arizona to get that to your heirs, and then it's probated again in Pennsylvania. So it's another issue. Think very carefully on these. You can give me a call. I'll help give you some guidance or further insight or talk it over with you. There's no obligation. I'm here to help. All right, folks, I appreciate you tuning in to another edition of All Things Financial, and be back again next week.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and registered investment advisor. Insurance services offered through Driscoll Insurance and Financial Services Inc., which is not affiliated with SagePoint Financial Inc.